Then I'm associated with another organization, which is the Indian Association, United Indian Association, that is the umbrella organization of the 26 associations. I had been vice president for 2 years, and now I am chairing the community and student liaison committee because of the need of the international students. So we had to set up a special liaison committee with the federal, state and the local governments. Then we had set up Technocrats. I am the founder president for Technocrats Association of Australia. That was for helping the new migrants and the international students. Every year we do the settlement and the job hunting seminars. Then the GoPU, I think our Indian subcontinent friend people know, there are 25 million Indians who are living outside India. So it's more than the population of Australia. So we call them as PIOs, the people of Indian origin or person of Indian origin, non-resident Indians. So we founded that chapter in Australia. The first one was in Sydney. I had the honor to head that chapter as the founder president. Then there is the business body, Australia-India Business Council, which is the main chamber of commerce, the prime chamber of commerce for the trade between two countries. You might be looking, every delegation is being taken care of, incoming and outgoing trade delegations by Australia-India Business Council. So I had been associated with that from the New South Wales chapter. And from the national body, luckily, we have the president and vice president both from Victoria at the moment. And we have the player that Mr. Ravi Bhatia, who is the vice chairperson at the national level, and Mrs. Bhatia is here. Madhu Bhatia, she is though representing the community wing from the Victorian side. So taking how we can integrate the cultural diversity, education and inclusion of various communities, and assisting in the public-private partnerships. As we see for our mission, what we have to do in the various community level councils or various bodies, we have to see that we promote the joint action, and there should be cooperation among various ethnic communities. Because all the ethnic communities, they may be coming from different backgrounds, but they need to cooperate, they need to integrate. We do ensure that various communities, and there is the participation. The participation is there at different levels, but the participation of all the communities is not there in the decision-making processes. That is what I think we should go a step further. For the Asian communities particularly, I see, or for the minor communities like we were talking in Cambodia, the NGOs are not getting that much of the component. And in Australia, there is a greater opportunity for integration. There is a greater opportunity for these communities to have a broader role in decision making at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. Then we see we are encouraging various ethnic organizations, how we can get the people. The people are associated with various ethnic groups and ethnic organizations. This is the plus point in Australia, that to get an organization within a couple of minutes, you go to, like we have a Department of Fair Trading, you form an association. I belong to one small group, which is a Punjabi group. There are 400 Punjabi associations, for example. But there are very few associations which are proactive associations. And out of all these thousands of organizations or ethnic groups, you will find very few people who will be ready to serve the communities, to devote their time for the community work. Then what we do, we try to do the multiculturalism. That multiculturalism word has been taken out by the federal government. If you see, at one time it was the Department of Immigration and Multicultural Affairs plus the Indigenous Affairs. From DIMIA, they have gone to DIMA. Indigenous had gone. From Multicultural Affairs, they have come back to DIAC, the Department of Immigration and Citizenship now at the moment. So we put up something from our Ethnic Communities Council and from other bodies, that why, if we say multiculturalism is there, the word multiculturalism shouldn't be removed. It should be taken up in a more positive sense. So to the last immigration minister and to the deputy PM, who is now the prime minister, we had put up that multiculturalism should be taken in a broader perspective. Then promoting various democratic attitudes for racial harmony, it is there and the understanding is there, though some positives and negatives come up and go. no discrimination, that's for everyone. Then, like in ECC, as we were just saying, advocacy, that's the main role everywhere in each state, even at the federal level. Then we do educate, and the community development is one of our main objectives. With the Ethnic Communities Council, we do promote the principles of multiculturalism, and Australia has the right to participate fully in that society. I think I have already taken 5 minutes. So I will be just going through then in the discussion we can see. In the inclusion initiatives, that's what, for example, the Australian government has put so much of the money, and the partnership activities, those are more important in making the inclusion of the various communities. Then for these, because this was the main issue which was just tarnishing the image of the Australian government, so we had played a role in, like I was telling previously, in the state task force, in the federal level, various induction guidelines and grooming programs. We are continuously doing those programs. Then in the cultural diversity participation, it is a must. We must value the diversity, and we must reduce the inequalities, and we must encourage the participation. How the participation can be further taken up. Then because the public-private partnership, our friend Peter has put up, how we can take up some of the components, like we know the public and private bodies, these partnerships are coming up now because they do work. Just one example I am giving you, 7 years back we had taken some delegation, both the governments had signed the agreements, nothing has come up. When they signed with our private organizations, we made it to happen. Vocational program has started in India for the 10 institutions in the span of only 1 year, which for 7-8 years we were looking, nothing had gone up. So this is one example will come up. So because I have been associated in education, we have done all these, or we are assisting in the setting up of various campuses. So we will be assisting any sort of assistance you require. Our organizations will provide you as a linkage point. So we will be acting as a catalyst. At the national public-private partnership working groups have already been set up. It's up to us how we can take the advantage from them. Then various other future events which we have on our agenda are the skill development. The skill development should not only be here, it should be in those countries. We are taking up in a big way this upskilling of the forces in India with the government level, with various private organizations. Yeah.
I think your time is coming close to up.
Okay. So these are the institutions which we have touched. Anyhow, you are welcome for the further discussion. I will be there available. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, I'm Graziella. I'm from New Zealand, and I should say kia ora, maloa lele, and good morning everybody. In as many of the languages that I could speak at this particular stage, and kifent and also bonjour. I am Maltese Italian. I was born in India. I carry an Australian passport. I live in New Zealand. I'm shortly to be married by a Methodist priest in a Catholic service on a Buddhist property, which I don't know makes me, it defines my identity, I suppose. And he's going to be saying that service beside a kaumātua who will also be speaking in Māori. And I will be stepping over a veil as part of that ceremony to acknowledge my Indian heritage. There you go. I'd like to introduce you to Foster New Zealand, and I understand under the topic that I've been given that I'm here to really to inform and to inspire you and to impart some tools as well in and around how it is that we form public and private partnerships. As a snapshot of my journey, I think that's the most valuable way to impart that to you this morning. Very free to ask me further questions. I won't take you too much into Foster NZ. I'll just give you a brief snapshot of what we are. I think where we begin is with our logo. Foster NZ, as you can see up there, has 3 symbols, and those symbols at the very top there are acknowledgement of the koru of New Zealand, but they're of the mind, body, spirit that all of us hold as human beings. Foster is an acronym for the Foundation for Social Responsibility in New Zealand, and the T itself is just a representation of the image of New Zealand. Underneath that you see a heart. That heart represents pictures of all of the social issues that strike New Zealanders every day, and there are some very real pictures there, so I'd encourage you to look at those a little bit more closely later on. So Foster NZ at its heart and soul and its concept really that was what inspired some of the public and private partnerships, and why people became involved with Foster NZ was our ability to articulate to people what it is that we were about. In the very beginning, the first partnership that I formed was with a legal institution. Why? Because I had a lot of ideas, IP and research that I wanted to do, and during that veil of 2 years prior to actually launching Foster NZ only 4 weeks ago and having our trust signed, there was a lot of information and collaboration that needed to occur. So I chose a legal firm who are amidst one of the largest firms in New Zealand, Simpson & Grierson. And the reason that I formed that partnership originally was because I needed somebody to obviously assist me with our trust documentation. I also wanted somebody who knew legislation and who could be committed to helping me to forge further partnerships. And one of the challenges, I believe, for the NGO sector, having worked around NGOs now for a good 25 years, having worked for the government, having also worked in corporations, it's very important to be able to articulate to each different sector what it is that you're wanting to achieve. And those partnerships are really vital, because if you can't say it in their words, you might miss some opportunities. Foster NZ and what it does, so that I can give you a snapshot of that and you can get a huge enamouring for what it's all about, is I'd kind of like to step around. Is there that microphone? I'll stand here and do it. So Foster NZ is a reporting mechanism. The reason it actually exists is that I looked at New Zealand and its context, and I see, a number of charities. We have 96,000 charities in New Zealand, and what they're serving and who they're serving seems to be only there for those of us who want to go and find out what's actually going on. However, in our changing world, social responsibility and the words that bind us in our corporations seem to be more important to provoke action from every single person. And what I saw also within New Zealand context was a real need for us to celebrate our achievements, the great stories of people who are out there like yourselves, who are serving the community in many different ways. But people couldn't find you. They couldn't find what you were doing. They couldn't find out what it was that you were serving or how to get involved. What I was doing when I was setting up the design for Foster NZ was saying that in order for New Zealanders to be more socially responsible, they had to find out what the issues were, they needed to know who was serving those issues, and they needed to have a clear pathway of connection as to how they could connect with who was serving those issues and whether it was effective. And we needed to have a monitoring mechanism and some device in place. So what we're doing too is we're imparting learning and contribution, and that learning will take place via media. We actually fit very nicely with the UN Alliance of Civilizations, because our top 4 priorities are youth, media, education and multicultural. I can't get away from multicultural, I'm sorry, intercultural. So we also wanted to raise the contribution level in New Zealand, because we believe that amidst New Zealanders, most people were, if they knew the issues or knew how to be active or activate to go out and help NGOs in their community, because it's not only money, it's time, and whether there were people there who could come in and around and support some of the things that were occurring. So we wanted to raise that contribution level, and that's one of our key mandates. In order to, we hope, reduce and minimise some of the horrific statistics that we have, because we are a beautiful country, but there are some horrible statistics that we would like to reduce, especially those that affect our children. We would also like to celebrate, and I think that's quite important. So I'm giving you a snapshot of our charter, and then I'm going to go on to some of those partnerships. And so we're also celebrating some of the stories and experiences from the NGO sector, from the SME sector, because 95% of New Zealand business is actually small business, and 5% of corporate, the corporate sector, and also those individuals who are out there championing things on their own. We're hoping that as that conduit, we can increase, as I said, the incidence of social responsibility. We can draw the heart out of New Zealand. We can increase the incidence of caring and active behaviour, and we can reduce and minimise the horrendous effects on our children. 2 of the greatest statistics are around child abuse in our country, and also around youth suicide. And that's the heart of why I began Foster. So as founder, I'm speaking with my founder's hat on, those are some of the things that we've done. Can I take 2 more minutes? Is that okay? we've formed some very integral and important partnerships. And I guess in imparting some value to you today, one of those partnerships is with the Human Rights Commission, who are also here. My pathway to the Human Rights Commission came through the Ministry of Social Development. But before I actually went out looking for partnerships, what I sat down and said was, what are my criteria for those partnerships? Why do I want them? And what are my values and beliefs? And what needs to be the shared values and beliefs of the partnerships that I form? And what would I like them to do for me? And I went in with a clear set of expectations of those partnerships. Sometimes not so clear, because I needed to say, well, can you tell me what you can provide for me and how you can be of value to me in this particular exercise? So today we have 28 people behind Foster NZ. We have 7 committed partnerships in the public-private sector. Human Rights Commission are one of our very valuable partnerships, and we also have partnerships with a legal firm, an accountancy firm. We have a partnership also with a social media firm, and Ogilvy, a media firm that's international. We've been able to get beautiful brand and logo and documentation, and all of that's been done on a pro bono basis. And it is really important to think about those things so that you can present to others in the public-private sector in a way that they find appealing so that they can engage with your vision. So I guess that's my parting note. The other part around that is to also evolve your communication and make sure that you, from your heart, stick to what your foundation beliefs are about. It's really important to be in a consistent learning curve with those partnerships, but also when the door's closed to you, another door's always going to open. So you just have to keep going, but be clear about your own mandate in forming those partnerships. If you'd like to find out more about Foster NZ, then visit our website, which I'll throw up there. And also visit us on Facebook, because I'd like you to like us as well.
Thanks, Graziella.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Don Carroll. I'm here representing a company called Gujarat NRE, and I probably will do this by just telling a couple of brief stories. I won't do a presentation, but I'm happy to pass on something to Peter later on, just in the interest of time, so if you don't mind. I also was with BHP Billiton for a number of years, mostly in overseas locations in Japan, India, United States, and West Africa as well too. So I guess the sort of subject we're here today to talk about is of personal interest to me and also of interest to the company I'm now with. I'm a director of Gujarat NRE, which is one of India's largest sort of industrial companies. It's about $1 billion US company, which also happens to be one of the larger Indian companies investing in Australia. In fact, I think it was the largest until very recently. And I find it very interesting that a number of the things that Gujarat NRE is actually doing in the public-private space in Australia are the sort of things that bigger end-of-town companies do, such as the BHP Billitons and some of the other big global companies do in other countries. And a quick example around that is that Gujarat NRE in Wollongong, it operates coke and coal mines down there, actually provides a percentage of the company's revenue goes to a mental health organisation down there, so supporting depression and areas like that. It also came into town and it found that the local basketball team didn't have a sponsorship, and the company decided, well look, it was part of the community and it would be part of the community, and the basketball was part of the community, so it actually went and engaged with that. There are several other programs which the company has involved itself in, which I find intriguing because, as my wife said to me, she said, Don, you know, it's interesting, Gujarat as an Indian company is doing in Australia what BHP was doing in India, you know, and I think it's a little bit of a twist on things. Quite often we think it's, I don't know, our obligation as the host here in Australia to fall over backwards and to help other people. Quite often foreign companies coming into Australia see exactly the same needs that we do, but we as a community haven't acted on it, but that foreign company can actually come in, identify why it's here, why it wants to be part of the community, and act on it. And I think that's the success in public-private relationships. You actually have to have something that is out there that, you know, you are part of the community, so that you're not just giving something away. I'll use another quick example, and ring the bell when I'm done. A lot of the companies that I'm associated with, if you like, in the mining sector, do want to help the Indigenous people. No doubt about it. You've heard Andrew Forrest and so on. They really are passionate about it. But the difficulty is, it's not just about offering a job. They can offer a job, they can offer 1,000 jobs, which they want to do, but you've got to go through all the training and so on to get people up to the standard where they can actually work successfully in that sort of environment. So the link between the public-private partnerships is, I think, a very, very real one, where the big private companies, I'm talking about that sector at the moment, do have the wherewithal to create the long-term future for a lot of these organisations, but what they don't have is how to get it started at some of the grassroots levels. And I think that's where the organisations that have been represented in the last few days actually do play a key role. I'll give you another quick example at the larger end of town too, which I'm familiar with, which is one of the, in fact I think it's a couple of the large legal firms in Melbourne actually sponsor a Friday night school. The Friday night school is for migrant school children from different ethnic backgrounds to be schooled on, as it says, Friday evenings, because really they have to overcome literacy problems, language problems. Their parents don't speak English at home, so the children actually have to be brought up. Now that is being given assistance, both teaching by the lawyers, by support obviously in funding and so on. So again, a very successful program targeted between the big end of town, the small end of town. So there's probably many of those that can be made to work successfully and can reach the whole community. One last example I'll give, certainly related to BHP. When I was in India, we set up the BHP Billiton Foundation there. We also had an association with the Prasad Eye Institute over there. We worked through the Fred Hollows Institute here in Australia, and we built, with association with a Canadian NGO group, built it was quite a substantial hospital. I think it cost about $6 million in a place called Orissa, which is a very depressed part of India, very, very impoverished part of India, a state-of-the-art eye hospital. Prasad Eye Institute provided obviously the doctors and the expertise. The BHP obviously provided the funding and so on, and the Canadian group provided the funding. So these things can come together in very, very practical ways and create a wonderful future. So happy to have questions, have some dialogue later, but thanks very much for the opportunity to speak, Peter.
Thank you. So hopefully that has stirred up some questions for you, and we have about 15 minutes to have a conversation around this topic of public-private partnerships. So if we can have some microphones around the floor, and there's a question up the back.
You've got a very good question. I was talking to somebody who's no longer with BHP but is in a senior position the other day, and he said to me, he said, I forget what the amount of money that was given out through programs was, let's just call it, $20 million at the time. This is a good 10, 15 years ago. And he said, if we could, I said to my people, how many of the requests do we actually answer? And it was something like 10% of requests for funding actually went out through the donations. And he said, if we doubled the amount of money that we had, how many of those people could we help? And they said, well, maybe 15%. I mean, to say unfortunately, I haven't given you a good answer. There are a lot of requests that are actually made for very, very many worthy causes, absolutely worthy causes. It is often very hard to get a voice around that. To be more specific to your question, It is very difficult. I would suggest all big companies, BHP included, do have if you like, a social responsibility area. It can quite often come in under the environmental area, community, and so on. I think if you can, that's the sort of person you would actually try to contact in the company. Quite often an easier way is to direct an email to the company rather than perhaps trying through the switchboard. But you almost have to have a name. So, if you like, you can catch up with me later. Quite happy to have a quick talk to you if you like. But you do have to have that personal touch, unfortunately, due to the large number of requests that come in.
Thank you. Just to let you know, anyway, how you do get past the receptionist in a doctor's office is you arrange for lunch and you buy sandwiches on a silver tray.
Question just there.
Is there a plan for foster AUS, or is there a similar for you?
That's a good question. I've been asked that quite a lot lately. I've been approached by about 3 or 4 different people who are really interested in Foster Australia. And, any model that we'd like to replicate Foster, we've been asked to replicate it in Asia as well. What we'd like to do is obviously, in taking that model into replication, ensure, like any model, that it's taken in context with a voice. We've found our voice relatively quickly and easily in the New Zealand context. There may be other ceilings to get through. But definitely, if you'd like to speak to us about it, I can put you in touch with some of the people who've approached me. But yeah, there have been questions about it. It's a top-down organisation, so it's more a conduit into what's going on in the local space and an awareness campaign.
There's some questions at the back.
Look, I'm sure the others will want to comment too, and I'll be very brief. I can only speak from my own personal experience, right, over similar career time as you just outlined. I'd have to say that in the case of, say, BHP Billiton, they had a program in Mozambique which had a number of things associated with. Mozambique had just come out of a very bad period of time, civil war, so on. The company was building a large aluminium smelter there. It had to create a program to eradicate malaria in the area. It did that in conjunction with one of the UN agencies and the local government. They did that over a period of about 10 years, actually eradicated malaria there. Now that improved the lifestyle immediately of all the families in the region, not just the ones who happened to be employed by the company. It was a benefit to the company because they were actually able to come to work healthy and well and so on. The company then went, I was reminded earlier this morning, somebody was talking about market gardens. The company actually set up market gardens, set up an area. Don't forget, this was a country that had been through a war-torn sort of exercise. So the market gardens there, so people could grow produce and sell it, not just to the company and so on. So I think that your point is a good one. It is very difficult sometimes to get through to companies that the benefits come when their employees turn up happy, their families are happy, and their broader family are happy and cared and well cared for. But the benefits were clearly there. And in the case of Mozambique, of course, what happened after that, with that sort of investment, eradication of malaria, tourists came. So then you ended up getting this whole wonderful sort of building on something which initially had been a relatively, perhaps not even seen as, well, eliminate malaria. What's that going to do for us? You know, well, it has huge repercussions, not just for the company. But I appreciate your point. It's quite often very difficult to make that link.
Can I answer that as well? Just from a company perspective, I've got access to a couple of really good pieces of global research driven by a couple of different firms in and around corporate social responsibility. And the interesting factor is that as social responsibility is becoming regulated, companies are going to need to and are needing to report on how they interact with the community. And part of social responsibility is also how you treat those that work for you. And family values are mentioned in each of those documents, which I'm happy to send to you. One of them was done by KPMG International. And so it's quite a big piece of research, and I'm sure that I can have approval just to pass it on to you. I do take your point, and I do think it's very important that social responsibility also needs to be part of the living and everyday practice of the understanding of our families and family values. Our corporations need our communities. They exist in our communities and have a relationship with those communities and the families within them.
Sam?
Two questions, and I'm not sure whether they're related. The first question is, was an extension from the previous one, and it's really about the risk you want to be part of, and what that means to the shareholder themselves in terms of their engagement in developing cultural diversity. So that's one question. The second question is more about ethnically led business associations. And I respect the view that's been presented, certainly by the Central Indian Business Organisation, they're quite involved in that, in New Zealand, and also the Vietnamese Overseas Business Organisation, the myriad of other similar kinds of things. One of the challenges for many of these organisations and for many of these bodies is how they become relevant in the wider sort of economy of particular countries, because what tends to happen is that, and it's not a good term, but mainstream whatever prevails because of the form of media structures that we have. So how do organisations like yourself, make or present yourselves as, you know, ensures the voice of Indian-led business associations, or whether it's any other organisation. I mean, in our country, Indigenous-led business organisations are a considerable investment in New Zealand. I mean, Naitamu, the organisation in the South Island, the second largest employers of work. So how does that contribute to the changing national role face of diversity of those countries? I just want to see how that answer as well. So two separate questions, but they might be related.
I'll just address the first one, and maybe that you documented the second one.
So I can touch on, I think, maybe the second part, the contributions from the community organizations and the chambers or the business councils. They really have to play a very positive and constructive role, which can actually contribute to the broader economy of the country where we are the part of. Just one example I can give, like from Australia. For example, we do from the community organization or the other, we do a very big event which is attended by around 20 or 30,000 people, that is called India-Australia Friendship Fair. How we get the corporates, for example, the corporates like NRE Gujarat, IDP, all those big corporates, they come, ANZ Bank, CBA, they become a part of that community organization's event. And that is their social responsibility, so they come and they do contribute. Then how do these organizations, they contribute for the cultural component or the diversity component? We do start with our Aboriginal community component, the very start. So we try to involve all these communities, the broader community, the corporates. In each and every aspect, I think we try to contribute from our side so that the people who are the new migrants, the people who have already integrated into the society, they get a platform to integrate. Then we do take like our chambers and the business councils, our trade delegations. Those are the real example where we are part of those delegations when at the federal level or state level the ministers are going. We are part of those delegations, and that really gives them an insight of what they need in that country. And when, for example, a delegation is coming from New Zealand to here, from India to here, all those we have been collaborating, and we do every year a number of trade delegations. We call them as the buyer-seller meetings. We give them a platform to start their own businesses, different sort of partnerships. We try to play our role, but I think it should be further broadened. I do appreciate your suggestion.
Thanks. Just to your first point, Sam. Look, for a number of years now, most of the large companies, and it's extended right down through any publicly listed company now, it does have to have their triple bottom line, as they call it. I think it's pretty clear to most shareholders, whether they be institutional shareholders or individual retail shareholders, that the company's reputation does damage its share price, and it can have its reputation damaged in many, many ways. It's not just all about the factory not producing, it's also the fact that there's been a problem in their workforce and so on. So I think that today most of those sort of things are actually measured very, very precisely, and I think the shareholders expect the boards to be held accountable, and if the boards aren't watching them, then the boards get replaced. There has been a big change, I think, to answer your question.
Kalpana?
Hi, my question is for Dawn. So far we've been talking about the flow of support from private to public to enable community-based initiatives. My question is about reversing the flow, right? Using the strength that NGOs and public organizations have in enriching life within the private space. My organization, the mission of my organization is to create a stress-free, violence-free society. And I come with a background of 15 years in the corporate sector, and I transitioned to the NGO space a few years ago. And I find there's a lot of corporate stress. And as one goes up the corporate ladder, it's just assumed that you've got to cop a lot of stress. And we find that organizations are in deep denial about tolerance, stress tolerance levels. Recently, we've partnered with a small organization where we found there was a lot of attrition rate, burnout happening, and we went and helped that organization to deal with those issues and empower the staff to build that resilience. My question to you is, given that within the private sector, the focus is on the bottom line, end of the day, that's what shareholders are looking for. The focus is on productivity. But how do we deal with this issue of deep denial about the way stress is eating into the soul of individuals within the corporate landscape?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, actually. One of the examples I was going to give is there is a large bank, one of the Australian Big Four banks, and there has been an individual there. She started running a program. It wasn't directly around stress, I'll come back to it in a minute, but it was around diversity, and she was running it within the Australian part of the organisation. It was a very successful program. It was then put into the Indian part of that organisation's staff and workforce. They then took it on to the UK. Now, that was all around about how do you handle diversity within large organisations. On the stress side of things, I think it's a very good point. What I'm trying to say there is that organisations can be in denial, yes, but at the same time they recognise, given the diversity example if you like, they do recognise that these things you just can't keep pushing aside. You actually have to front up to them and you have to do something about them. Otherwise you're going to have some very serious problems. In that case, the organisation obviously felt that its diversity was good, but maybe it wasn't as accepting or as understanding, and you could see the repercussions rolling out from that. I think in the stress-related field as well too, I just think that's another very good example, and I'd have to say that, you know, from a personal point of view, yes, you can be, if you just want to focus on the bottom line, maybe delivering the project to whatever it is that you're responsible for in a company without having the outlet of a bit of care and compassion and so on, then you are an unbalanced person. And I can only but say that I think organisations, if they're not doing it, and I think you're right, I don't think many of them are addressing the stress side of things enough, should be doing it, because again you get a better and more well-rounded person. And I think it then flows through to these public-private partnerships around creating, you know, the health and well-being of the society in general. You know, if you've got a whole bunch of engineers just focused on building that plant and completing it, no matter what the cost, if you like, except the price will stay the same, then there could be a lot of damage done. So I think you're right.
So thank you. Thank you. We've come to the end of the session. If we could put our hands together for the panellists. Thank you.